So, welcome to all of you, in fact. So, let me start with a discussion of the history paper. See, the test on history that was conducted uh, was having variety of questions, in fact. And if you see the kind of questions, it was ranging from the art and culture aspect to the modern India, and then finally also to the extent of world history. So all the three dimensions, including the post-independence, was also covered. So covering these areas definitely in the context of their importance for this year's main examination. And if you see certain questions, which I also believe are equally very important and can be asked to you in any, let's say, next mains examination conducted by UPSC, uh, which we will be discussing shortly. Fine. At the same time, having gone through your answers were perfectly on the right lines, one mostly in fact on the right lines, barring a few exceptions. And secondly, there were few questions that you could not attempt, in fact. So in the evaluation, I realized that if you would have attempted all those questions, perhaps your score could have been, let's say, maybe 20, 30 marks more than what you actually have got. So it means that overall performance-wise, I am satisfied with the performance of almost all of you who have written the answers and who have given me the answers to get evaluated. Now, having said that, let me now share the question paper with all of you now. All right. Now, see the question paper that is of history and culture, which I have already given you the model answer hint. Fine. If you have gone through, that's all right. If you're not, today after this discussion, you must go through that. So let me start with the discussion one by one. See, the very first question, that is, discuss how and in which aspects the impact of Buddhism in India continued even after its decline. See, questions like this are very important, and I believe that in any given year, such kind of questions can be asked to you. The reason being that this exactly a question that was asked to me in my very second interview in UPSC, in fact. So this question was asked to me by one of the members to me that can you give me some insight upon the impact of Buddhism on the cultural practices that we follow today? So that was a question asked to me. So obviously this question can also be asked to you, in fact, in the main examination. So therefore, I frame this question in such a manner that actually has the relevance and importance of being asked also by UPSC in the main examination. So that is the significance of this particular question. Now, having said that, let us now discuss about that how and in which aspect the impact of Buddhism can be seen even after its decline. See, first and the foremost thing that you have to always highlight that Buddhism as a religion may have declined, but Buddhism as a culture never declined. All right, and let me tell you one thing at the outset that is one of the learnings from the history for all of you, that you will never accept the decline of any culture because culture never declines. Fine. It is only the practice, it is only the system, it is only the political setup which actually has emerged at a particular point of time that only declines, not the culture declines. Fine. Therefore, we have to keep in mind that Buddhism as a religion, if we say, then definitely we have seen in the context of its declining trend, especially in the number of the followers, especially in the number of the people who actually follow Buddhism in India in comparison to the other religions. All right. So in that way, we can understand it actually declined. But when we say Buddhism is a, let's say, a way of living, a way of, let's say, I mean, existence in society, especially in the context of culture, we have to always keep this particular point of observation that it has never declined in India. All right, it has always been a part of India's way of life. All right, that's what actually you have to start with this introduction only. Fine. Then, of course, you have to explain that the so-called decline of Buddhism as a religion can be seen only in the context of the post-Gupta period. The post-Gupta period, and of course, with the emergence of Hinduism, or of course, emergence of so-called the revival of Hinduism, especially in the context of the Bhakti movement. All right, and at the same time, the impact of the Islamic religion on India. So these all factors contributed in the so-called decline of Buddhism as a religion from this country. Fine. However, of course, with the decline of Buddhism in India, it also emerged as a set of religion in some other parts of the world, especially in Southeast Asia. So, in one way, what you have to understand, you have to explain this idea that if religion of Buddhism declined in India, at the same time, it also emerged as a religion in many parts of Southeast Asia, explaining like the example, for example, like let's say Myanmar or Burma. All right. So this is how you can substantiate the very first particular statement, and then you have to come out with this particular aspect, that in which manner, in which aspect the impact of Buddhism can be seen in India. So of course you have to explain it in the various aspects. First of all, aspects need to be analyzed on the political front, that how in the politics of India, Buddhism still owes a lot of importance. All right. So in that way, you have to explain this idea that how our Indian constitution, the constitution of India, it actually borrows many of the features of Buddhism. Many of the features of Buddhism, for example, let's say respect towards elders. For example, let's say respect towards your national heritage. For example, let's say respect towards animals, birds, and other living beings. All right. So this is something that we have derived it from the ideology of Buddhism only. All right. So that's what actually we have to talk about. That similarly also the idea of even secularism can also be seen ideologically emerging from the concept of Buddhism only. That's another analysis that we can also derive it as far as political aspect of Buddhism is concerned in India. Fine. So that is one thing you have to explain. Then similarly, you have to also explain in the context of its economic aspect. Now, in economic aspect, of course, Buddhism supported the trading and the merchant class. All right, it supported the trading and merchant class. It also supported the trade and commerce across the areas, and therefore we also borrowed this notion of promoting trade and commerce from the ideology of Buddhism only. So India has been known for a mercantile class right from the ancient time. Still, India is known in the world as a mercantile community in the world, even in the contemporary time. So, in that way, also Buddhism actually had supported the idea of economic well-being in the society. That's also one of the ideas that you have to derive it from the impact of Buddhism. Fine. Thirdly, you have to also talk about the socio-cultural aspect of Buddhism. Now, the socio-cultural aspect of Buddhism, you have a lot of ideas to be explained. All right. The ideas that you can explain in the context of that, how do we accept the ethical code of conduct for living a simple yet a meaningful life. All right, that we learned it from Buddhism only. Secondly, how do we, of course, conduct ourselves in the context of the truth and non-violence? That is equally, we learn it from Buddhism only. And we have some great leaders of India which followed the principles of Buddhism during the modern time, even in the contemporary times as well. So, of course, for example, Mahatma Gandhi's ideology actually has been derived completely from the ideology of Buddhism only. So, this is how we have to explain this idea upon the socio-cultural aspect. Fine. Then you also have to explain the idea of impact of Buddhism on our cultural practices. Cultural practices, let's say the simple meal that we do talk about, to have a simple meal in the night. We do promote about a simple meal in the night for the sake of maintenance of the balance between our soul and body, isn't it? So this idea actually has also been derived from Buddhism only. So that is another very important, you can say, feature of our culture that we derive from Buddhism only. Then we also have to explain in this context about the art and cultural impact, the impact upon art and culture, because that is very profound. That is quite profound in India. So art and culture impact in what sense? Of course, you have to explain about the construction of stupa. All right. So construction stupa has also influenced the Islamic architecture in the form of dome. Fine. So you have to understand this idea that construction of dome, arch and dome were originally constructed in the Buddhist stupa only. And from there only this idea of construction of arch and dome were learned by the Islamic architecture, and then finally it transmitted to the Western people, Western culture, and as well as to the Indian society as well. So these all aspects you have to explain in the context of the impact of Buddhism only. Fine. Then you have to also explain about the impact of Buddhism also in the context of our education system. All right. So ancient universities, the textbooks, the scriptures, the writings, the local dialect, the local languages like Pali, etc. It got promoted due to Buddhism only. Fine. So this is how you have to explain this idea in the varieties of forms. ठीक है? तो करना क्या है कि आपको इस आइडियाज को बहुत सारे एस्पेक्ट्स में क्लासिफाई कर देना है. आप ऐसे लिखेंगे तो you will write let's say 5-6 points at the max. But once you classify it in a political system, economic system, socio-cultural system, psychological system, art and architecture, art and culture system, then of course you will be having a lot of ideas to explain in this particular context, and then you will fetch maximum marks out of your writing. That's what actually you have to learn this exercise in answer writing part. All right. Normally you know about the facts, you can narrate the facts in a point form, but if you narrate the facts not only in the point form, rather under certain structure, it will fetch you very high marks. That's what you have to do. Okay. So that is the first question.
Sir. Sir, एक इसमें क्वेश्चन में पूछा हुआ था कि we have to discuss the impact of Buddhism in India. तो सर इसमें इंटरनेशनल इन्फ्लुएंस लिखना सही रहेगा क्या सर?
वो इसमें इंटरनेशनल इन्फ्लुएंस आपको इतना ही बताना है कि डिक्लाइन ऑफ बुद्धिज्म एज अ रिलीजन took place in India, but at the same time, Buddhism as a religion also emerged as the international, you can say, order, especially in Southeast Asian countries. So at one hand, Buddhism as a religion declined in India, but on the other hand, it emerged as a religious order, especially in Southeast Asian countries. For example, Myanmar, even today practices, Thailand, even today practices Buddhism as a state religion in that way.
So yeah, aspect सर ये इंट्रोडक्शन में थोड़ा आ जाएगा.
इंट्रोडक्शन में या इंट्रोडक्शन के बाद का सेकंड पॉइंट पे आप उसको डाल सकते हैं.
और सर ये जो इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट आपने बोला सर, इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट भी इन्फ्लुएंस हुआ, तो सर जो इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन के टाइम से ही अपना इंटर कंट्री ट्रेड हो रहा था, मतलब मेसोपोटामिया के साथ.
राइट.
तो आपका इन्फ्लुएंस सर बुद्धिज्म का इन्फ्लुएंस कैसे होगा सर?
इसमें समझना ये है कि देयर इज अ कांसेप्ट ऑफ सेकंड अर्बनाइजेशन इन इंडिया. Second, urbanization in ancient India. So Buddhism actually promoted not only trade and commerce, but also emergence of urban centers. All right. So urban centers got emerged after the era of Harappans. Harappans was the era of first urbanization in India. So therefore, Harappans also contributed in the trade and commerce activities and emergence of urban areas, urban centers. But after the decline of Harappa, it took almost, let's say, more than thousands of years. Then after thousands of years, again Buddhism promoted this culture of urban setup in the Indian subcontinent. That was the contribution. Fine. That's what I have to explain the idea.
Okay.
Then now this is another very interesting question. You can see on your screen. The question is in the context of the comparison between the ancient and the medieval contributions in science and technology. Now, this question I believe is very important. It can be asked to you at any point of time, maybe in your mains or maybe in your interview. All right, just to check your understanding about the evolution of history in India. So, if you see on your screen very clearly mentions about, do you think that the growth of science and technology, it actually in ancient India was far advanced and superior than medieval India? So this is what actually you have to understand. So let us now understand that what is this question all about. The first and foremost thing, you have to understand that we cannot give importance to one phase over other. We have to extend importance to every phase of history of India. We cannot say that this phase was superior than the other phase. Now, that is one thing you have to learn out from history. Now, having said that, how to justify it? We have various examples to justify it. Now, when we say that in ancient India there were a lot of developments in science and technology, of course we have to classify them in the context of that what was the contribution in the field of, let's say, mathematics, what was the contribution, let's say, in the field of astronomy or so-called let's say the space science in that way, what was the contribution in the field of medicines, all right, what are the contributions in the field of engineering, what are the contributions also in the field of, let's say, metallurgy, or maybe in the context of even agriculture. So you have contributions also of ancient people in almost all the dimensions. All right. For example, if you start explaining it right from the time of, let's say, the Harappan civilization. Now, even in the Harappan civilization, we were having a good number of examples to corroborate the fact that they were having some sense of science and technology even at that particular point of time. For example, let's say construction of bricks. Now, the construction of bricks was simply uniform across all the Harappan cities or Harappan sites that we have discovered till now. It indicates that there must have been some system of measurement at that particular point of time. So exactly in that way, we have to relate this particular concept. Then secondly, we have to also come out with this particular concept that they were also knowing about the construction of fire altars. So fire altars construction was also indicative of they were having a knowledge of even geometry. All right. So that is another very important observation regarding the Harappans. Fine. Thirdly, we have to also explain about that the Harappans were also having a knowledge of how to construct wheels, how to construct circular wheels. All right, to, let's say, to move the heavy loaded commodities from one place to another place. They were also having knowledge of how to construct boats to conduct their trade and commerce through sea routes. So these all examples indicate that they were having fair idea about the knowledge of science and technology even in that particular point of time. Fine. So in this way, we have to understand the evolution of science and technology in ancient India. Now, definitely by the time when we enter into the time of the Gupta period, now we have actually got huge examples of the contributions of various scientists, various scholars of ancient India who contributed their fair idea, their fair knowledge of science and technology to our own understanding, right from, let's say, Aryabhat to Brahmabhat or Brahmagupt. So we have a lot of people who actually have been there in ancient India who contributed in the evolution of mathematics, geometry, and other subjects of science and technology in that particular point of time. The remarkable contribution was definitely the construction of iron pillar of Qutub Minar, which is related to the Chandra or Chandragupta II of Gupta Empire, which is still rust free. So that kind of iron is not even being constructed in the contemporary era, but it was constructed in the, let's say, 5th century CE during the Gupta period, where when we find that since then till today, this iron pillar has not got rusted, which is indicative of their supremacy in the knowledge of metallurgy even at that particular point of time. All right. That is one example which can corroborate your entire idea about the contributions of ancient people in the field of science and technology. Now, having said that, it does not mean that they were inferior or they were superior over the other phases of historical development in the field of science and technology. All right. And then you have to explain the idea about the science and technology in India, especially in the context of the medieval period. All right. So medieval period, of course, it is known for having an influence of Islamic and also European knowledge of knowledge in the field of science and technology. So those aspects have to be explained in the medieval period. So in the medieval period also there are a lot of, we can say, contributions which actually came. All right, which actually came in the medieval period, right from, let's say, the time of the Sultanate period itself. So from there only we have to explain this idea that in the Sultanate period also we have got a lot of contributions in the field of science and technology, and the most remarkable of them is, in fact, in the context of mathematics, in the context of let's say the astronomy, in the context of even the construction of some new technologies, some new gadgets. All right, so these all things actually came up during the time of only the medieval India. Fine. So in every field, whether you take the example of, let's say, biology, take the example of agriculture, take the example of paper making, gunpowder, etc. This all actually had come in the era of medieval period only. Fine. Not only that, even the idea and the knowledge about astronomy got immensely enhanced in the medieval period only. And for that, of course, the contributions of Savai Raja Jai Singh can't be forgotten over here. All right, in the construction of the various astronomical observatories in different parts of India. Fine. So we all know about this particular contributions also. Definitely in the other aspects also, like agriculture and irrigation as well, we got some new methods of farming, we got some new technology of farming. All right, and some new products also came up as a farming. So these all actually had been the contributions of the medieval India only. Fine. So these things you have to highlight, in fact. And there's a book written recently by Muhammad Aslam Parvez, the scientific Muslim. This book's name is Scientific Muslim: Understanding Islam in a New Light. All right, this book is remarkably highlighting the contributions of the Islam or the Muslim population, especially in the field of science and technology, especially in the medieval period only. This book also analyzes the fact that the Muslim population who were having scientific temperament in the medieval period, they lost it in the modern and the postmodern period. So this book is now being debated in various stream of, you can say, scholarly debate. So therefore, this question can be asked to you as a question there also in the main examination. Fine. So last couple of months, in this book was published in the month of September only, and since then only this book is being debated in various scholarly debates. So from there only, I also frame this question. All right. So this question is important in that particular context only. And if you look at the book very nicely says, it says that the Muslim population was merely 15% of the total world population in the first, let's say, the first half of the medieval period, in fact, till 1750, in that way. But they were contributing somewhere around, let's say, 90% in the development of scientific temperament. So they were having only 15% of the total world population, but their contribution in the medieval period was 90% in the field of scientific discoveries or inventions at that particular point of time. On the other hand, today their population has risen to 22%, but ironically, their contribution in the field of science and technology has decreased to less than 1%. All right. Now that is what this book says. That is not my opinion. This book says about this particular observation. Now it means that somewhere the Muslim population has gone away from the scientific touch in their lifestyle. All right, and that is precisely the problem in Islam today. Fine. So in this book, this analysis has been nicely done. So from there, this idea has been derived, and this particular issue has also been very nicely explained in one of the books written by NBT, National Book Trust. All right. of the on the issue of science and technology in medieval and ancient India. So वहां से भी ये idea मैंने उठाया है. ये question आ सकता है कभी भी आपको prelim mains में in fact. So that's what actually was the idea. So in nutshell, you have to come down to this conclusion only, that we can't say that one particular phase of history of India was superior over other. Rather, it is better to say that every phase was having its own share of contributions towards making Indian culture rich and composite. So what we are today, it is all due to the contributions of ancient and medieval India only. That's what actually we would be the final conclusion. Rather to give importance to any phase, we have to give importance to both the phases. ठीक है, तो ये ध्यान रखना है कि इससे वो आपका दिमाग टेस्ट करेंगे कि आपका ओरिएंटेशन कैसा है. All right, so that's what is the point. Fine. So,
सर,
हाँ,
ये क्वेश्चन में अगर कंपैरिजन पूछता तो भी अपने को कभी एक पीरियड को दूसरे से ये नहीं करना है ना, एक्सप्लेन नहीं करना होगा.
हाँ, कंपैरिजन कर सकते हैं, लेकिन कंपैरिजन करने का मतलब ये नहीं कि we have to take a stand. We should not take a stand because we are not a researcher. We are not an authority on any ancient medieval period. We are only a learner, and being a learner, we have taken only the positive things of both the phases. All right. So दोनों phases में कुछ ना कुछ positives थे. Medieval positives थे, पेपर का इंट्रोडक्शन होना, गन पाउडर बनना, है ना, और पर्शियन व्हील का आना. तो इससे बहुत सारे काम हमारे सुविधाजनक हो गए. बहुत सारे नए नए क्रॉप्स इंट्रोड्यूस हुए इंडिया में, बहुत सारे नए मेथड्स ऑफ फ्रूट ग्राफ्टिंग इंट्रोड्यूस हुए, है ना, जो हम अभी कहते हैं अल्फोंसो आम. तो ये सब जो है उसी समय इंट्रोड्यूस हुए. तो ये सारा उसका कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन था. तो वी आर ओनली टेकिंग द पॉजिटिव थिंग आउट ऑफ दिस एंटायर फेजेस ऑफ medieval India or any particular point of time, because I mean, if you see the other perspective, now they criticize ancient India in the context of that ancient India was not having the proper institution of medicine or proper institution of science developed in ancient India. Because according to the critics of ancient India, they say ancient India's science and technology development was full of magical charms. Magical charms. All right, it was not purely scientific stream. Magical charms were removed by the Islamic domination in India. All right, so Islamic domination gave the, you can say, full-fledged stream to the subject of science in India, and the centers like Baghdad, Cairo, Spain, they were the centers of the scientific origin in the world in medieval India. All right, that is the critics' argument. But we have to take the arguments from both the sides. There were contributions also from ancient India, and there were also equally contributions also from the medieval India. That's what we have taken point. Okay. Fine. So let us now get to the third question. That third question is the culture developed in the ancient Asian countries was a replica of the Indian culture in ancient times. So this question I have taken straight forward from the NCERT textbook. All right, if you see your NCERT, there's a chapter completely on this particular issue in your ancient India book, written by R.S. Sarma old NCERT. So first of all, let me tell you, in this question, you had to keep this idea away altogether, that the culture that developed in the Asian countries was a replica. It was not a replica, because once you say replica, it simply means it is the complete following of one culture by another culture. It's not like that. Replica means that the other culture is subservient to the dominant culture from where it actually imbibes certain features. So this notion, you have to keep it away in your answer, because this is what actually was the demand of this question. You have to give this idea, was it a replica or was it an indigenously developed culture? So this is what you have to take into consideration while writing this particular question. And exactly, if you see NCERT last paragraph of this particular chapter of NCERT book of ancient India, it says that the culture that developed in the Asian countries in ancient India was not a replica. Very clearly it is mentioned there. Therefore, I asked this question with just to see how many of you have understood this issue clearly and crystally. All right. So see, the culture developed in the Asian countries or replica of Indian culture in ancient times. So critically examine. The word critically examine itself says कि आपको इस स्टेटमेंट को बाय नहीं करना है, आपको इसको क्रिटिकली क्रिटिसाइज करना है और एग्जामिन करना है कितना हद तक ये सही है. ठीक है. तो अब आपको समझना क्या है इसमें. व्हाट यू हैव टू राइट अबाउट फर्स्ट द इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ द इंडियन कल्चर इन द साउथ ईस्ट एशिया एंड अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ एशियन कंट्रीज. So you have to start it right from the time of, let's say, the era of Buddhism. Era of Buddhism actually had been the era where we find the interaction between Indian culture and the Asian culture started increasing. All right. So the Buddhist pilgrimage, they started coming, pilgrims, they started coming to India. All right. So like from the time of Fahian, Huensang, Itzing, they all came down to India, and from there only they learned about Indian culture, and those cultures were again, of course, impacting, or they impacted the cultures of those countries like China, like Tibet, like Japan, etc. So these all cultures got influenced by this in that particular manner. Fine. Similarly, it was also impact of Hinduism. So Hinduism also had an impact, especially in the time of the Gupta period, or also in the time of, let's say, the modern period only you can write. All right. So modern period, Gupta period. So मॉडर्न पीरियड में आप लिखेंगे कैसे कि बुद्धिज्म कैसे एक्सपैंड किया, कैसे महिंद्रा और संघमित्रा को भेजा गया श्रीलंका की तरफ. ऑलराइट. एंड दिस इज हाउ इट स्टार्टेड स्प्रेडिंग. देन ऑफ कोर्स फ्रॉम गुप्ता टाइम वी सी ऑफ कोर्स the emergence of Hinduism as a dominant culture, dominant, you can say, ideology. So in that period also the interaction between the Indian and the Southeast Asian cultures started increasing. So in this way, many of the kingdoms that were set up in Southeast Asia, especially in, let's say, the area of Cambodia, area of even Myanmar, area of even, let's say, the Malay Peninsula, we see the emergence of many so-called Hindu culture, Hindu kings in those particular regions. Fine. So through this, of course, we see that the emergence of even the Asian cultures was having some sort of influence from the Indian culture at that particular point of time. And here you have to cite certain examples also. There are various examples of the Buddhist temples, examples of the Hindu temples, all right, in this all particular part of the land. Fine. So those examples have to cite. For example, recently, last year only, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had visited one of the temples in Myanmar, Anand Temple. So those examples you have to cite from the current affairs, if you have fair idea with current affairs or not. So from there only you can drive those examples. Apart from that, there are other examples like Borobudur Temple. There are various sculptures of Buddha over there. So they are very popular outside there in the entire Asian culture in that way. But at the same time, you have to understand this particular fact that these cultures that got developed locally only, it was not a replica in terms of, let's say, planting Indian culture directly over those areas. They got influenced the way Indian culture also got influenced by various cultures. All right. Because Indian culture is also you can say a union of various cultures, internally and externally also. So internally various cultures influenced so-called Indian culture, and externally also external cultures also influenced so-called Indian culture. So exactly same way the Asian countries also got a culture developed indigenously, but of course it was influenced, rather not a replica of the Indian culture. That's what actually you have to keep in mind while analyzing this particular question. ठीक है. तो ये ध्यान रखना है कि इसमें लिखना क्या है कंक्लूजन में. कंक्लूजन में यही आपको आइडेंटिफाई करना है कि ये रेप्लिका नहीं था, रादर इन्फ्लुएंस था. रेप्लिका तो हो जाता है कि आपने अपने ही कल्चर को वहां प्लांट कर दिया है. इट वाज नॉट लाइक दैट. इट वाज नॉट डन ईदर फोर्सफुली, not done even intentionally. All right. That's what actually is the idea about this question. Fine. Now coming to the next question, the question number 4, that is, what are the architectural traditions that inspired the architects of Vijayanagar, and how did they transform these traditions? See, first and foremost, you have to understand that the architectural traditions that inspired the architects of Vijayanagar should be analyzed in the context of that in the Vijayanagar Empire, we see the emergence of Providence style of architecture. All right. And this word is very important. If you don't mention this word, the examiner would have a feeling that you don't know about what kind of architecture was in existence in this particular period of time. So Providence style of architecture was a chief characteristic of Vijayanagar architecture. Fine. And then what was Providence style of architecture? It was a mix of both. It was a perfect blend of both Nagara and Dravida style of architecture. So Nagara and Dravida style of architecture both actually were included in this concept of Providence style of architecture. So in that way, what you have to explain about the specific feature of Providence style of architecture was mainly two. One was Gopurams, another one was the Mandapa, which used to be quite big. All right. So the Mandapa, which used to be quite big, especially which is called as Kalyan Mandap in the Vijayanagar Empire. Fine. So Gopurams, that is the entrance or the gateway. All right. And Kalyan Mandapa used to be the place where the worshipping of gods and the goddesses used to be done together. The union of gods and goddesses used to be done together in the temples of Vijayanagar Empire. There were typical characteristics of this particular era of architecture in Vijayanagar Empire. Fine. And how did they transform this tradition? They transformed these traditions in the construction of some monumentalization of the structure of architecture, in fact. So Vijayanagar Empire's contribution was in the context of giving a monumental shape to the concept of entire architecture. Everything should be given a big shape. Big shape. So pillars, let's say, have multiple pillars. 56, 57 pillars was there in only Vitthal temple. All right. So similarly, have, let's say, Gopuram, create a big Gopuram. All right. Let's say magnificent Gopuram should be created. Entrance gate should be always very great one, very big one, in fact. All right. That should also another contribution. Fine. Mandapa, the Mandapa was a chief characteristic of all the so-called, you can say, Dravida style of architecture. But what did they did? They created a big Mandap, Kalyan Mandap. All right. So again, that's another very important characteristic of the Vijayanagar Empire. Fine. Then also they created the platform for performing theatrics. Platform for performing theatrics, especially, let's say, the episodes of Ramayana used to be performed on every special occasion in the Vijayanagar temples and Vijayanagar so-called monuments at a particular point of time. All right. This is how something they kept on adding in terms of transforming their entire concept of architecture by the time of Vijayanagar Empire in the 16th century, all right, 16th century CE. Fine. That's what actually you have to explain in the context of the architecture of Vijayanagar Empire. All right. तो ये सारे एक्सप्लेन करना था आपको इसमें. Fine. Now, coming to next one, another very interesting question. Now, this question can be asked to at any point of time. Why there were multiple dynasties ruling Delhi Sultanate, but only a single dynasty in the Mughal period? Give you reasons. See, first of all, you have to understand the reasons for multiple dynasties in the Sultanate period. Now, you have to explain briefly in the introduction. The Sultanate period was established with the invasion of Muhammad Ghori, especially after Battle of Tarain, all right, 1192 CE. And then, of course, appointing one of his slave soldiers, Qutbuddin Aibak, to look after the affairs of Delhi and Ajmer area. Fine. That's what actually was the responsibility given to Qutbuddin Aibak, and Qutbuddin Aibak laid down the foundation of Delhi Sultanate in 1206 CE. That should be your introduction. Now, having said that, you have to also explain the factors for the multiple dynasties in Sultanate Empire. First and foremost factor you have to explain is that who were the people of Sultanate Empire who established this particular system, or this sort of empire in India. Now, these people belong to various regions. They were not belonging to one particular area. That's what actually you have to keep in mind at the outset. So they belong to areas like Turks. In fact, they were Turks belonging to the Turkish region, of course, in the area of West Asia. Fine. There were also the people from Persia. Persia is from Iran. Persia is Iran, in fact. So, of course, They were also from Iran, and even some of them were also from Afghanistan. So they were also Afghanis. So since there were ethnic groups, multiple ethnic groups who were acting as a slaves in the under the, let's say, the Turkish rulers. Now, because of that only, they came down to India, and because of that only, once they got the so-called chance to claim their power, of course, they claimed the power in the Delhi Sultanate. Having said that, you're also right. Besides this, that they were having various ethnic and tribal identities belonging to Turks, Tajiks, this is Tajikistan, the Persians, all right, the Afghans. So because of their various identities, they all came together under one particular concept of nobility in India. So nobility of Sultanate was of variety. That is one thing. Secondly, Sultanate was being ruled on the philosophy of primus inter pares, first among equals. Primus inter pares, that means first among equals. In other words, all of the ruling class of Sultanate, you can say area, Sultanate era, was of equal status. There was no difference between the so-called ruler or the nobility. The ruler was merely a first among equal, just like Prime Minister of India in the cabinet. So PM of India in the cabinet is first among equal. Or else anyone can become the PM. That's what is the fact. So the point was that they were ruling under the philosophy or under the policy of this primus inter pares, that is first among equals. Therefore, anyone could become the king or sultan at that particular point of time. Fine. Thirdly, there was no any law of Shariat. There was no any Islamic law that used to define that how the claim to the throne would be exercised. So since there was no any Shariat law which used to define how the claim of the throne could be exercised, everyone was dreaming to become a sultan in Delhi Sultanate. And therefore, if you see the era of Balban, the Balban deliberately tried to curb down this tendency of primus inter pares. बलबन जब आया तो बलबन को साफ साफ पता चल गया था कि अगर इस टेंडेंसी को खत्म नहीं करेंगे तो ये चहलगानी जो है, जो इल्तुतमिश ने बनाया है, ये चहलगानी कभी भी मुझे भी हटा देगा और मुझको हटा के अपने रूल करना शुरू कर देगा. इस चहलगानी में से कोई भी एक नोबल क्लेम कर लेगा थ्रोन. तो बलबन ने क्या किया, इस टेंडेंसी को खत्म करने के लिए पहले चहलगानी को खत्म किया और ये प्राइमस इंटर पेयर्स का जो फिलॉसफी था उसको हटा दिया. और कैसे हटाया, कहा कि मैं गॉड का डायरेक्ट अपॉइंटेड रूलर हूं इस धरती पे. सो आई एम द शैडो ऑफ गॉड, जिले इलाही. ऑलराइट, सो आई एम अ शैडो ऑफ गॉड, सो देयरबाय all of you would come under me. You are not parallel to me, you are not equal to me. All right, so Balban tried to reverse this process, however he could not succeed after his decline, after his demise. And again what we see that Khalji revolution took place. Jalaluddin Khalji became the ruler of Delhi Sultanate. So these stories narrate one thing that is in commonality, and that is that, of course, having variety of ethnic diversities or ethnic identities, having no law of succession in the Shariat. Thirdly, of course, the rule was primus inter pares philosophy was being ruled. So because of these factors, there were multiple dynasties that ruled over in the Delhi Sultanate. Whereas in comparison to the Mughals belonged to one common area, and that was Central Asia. So Mughals belonged to one common area, that was Central Asia, and all the prime postings of the Mughals were being controlled by the original Mughal ethnic groups only. Now that is how Babur gave this particular notion. Babur, when he attacked and he, of course, established the control over Delhi, of course, he provided this particular sense only that all the Mughals, they would be under the command of the sultan or the command of the monarch, in fact. All right. Therefore, if you see the kind of course, the responsibility, the kind of course, the true, you can say, loyalty towards the sultan, towards the monarch was very high in the time of Mughals. Because even though Akbar was merely a boy of 13 years old, yet entire forces of Mughals was giving unconditional support to Akbar in the Battle of Haldighati. All right. So in the Battle of Haldighati, also in the Battle of the you can say the first, you can say, entry of Akbar into Indian region in that way. All right. So Akbar got the immense support of loyalty, in fact, of all the Mughal soldiers unconditionally. But Akbar was also smart enough to understand about the continuation of Mughal dynasty for a long period of time could only be possible after taking the local support, which the sultans failed to do it, which the Delhi sultans failed to do it. Akbar was able to do it successfully, roping Rajput dynasties, roping the Rajput soldiers, roping the Rajput governors into the Mughals' Mansabdari system was the biggest contribution of Akbar in terms of providing this solidarity and also stability to the entire Mughal dynasty in India. And because of that only, it survived for a long period of time than the Sultanate era. So Mansabdari was the most important instrument in the Akbar's policy, which provided not only stability but also a uniformity in the context of the rule of a single dynasty for a long period of time in the Mughal period. So therefore, entire Mughal period was ruled only by a Mughals only in India, in fact. That's what you have to explain in your idea. ठीक है, तो ये आपको यही एक्सप्लेन करना है इस आइडिया के अंदर. ठीक है. Now, another very controversial question, but yet it is an important one, can be asked to you at any point of time. That is, Popular Rebellion of 1921 was a communal reaction in modern India. Comment. Now, this is one set of opinion, in fact. All right. One group of scholars, they say it was a communal reaction because the Popular Rebellion was led by the Muslims of Kerala, the Muslim peasants of Kerala against the Hindus, or also against the other people, in fact. But finally, it was against the Hindus, and therefore, there is one set of opinion which says that it was a communal reaction against the Hindus in modern India. All right, that is actually what is being debated also these days in the contemporary time. In fact, in one of the India Today article, this issue has been largely covered, extensively covered, in fact. All right, so that's what actually is the issue. I mean, this issue is also important because in this year we've been celebrating the 100 years of Popular Rebellion in that way. Fine. That is the importance of this political rebellion, and therefore it can also be asked you as a question there in the mains examination. Fine. So let us see what is to be written over here. See, what we have to write over here is that, let's say this reaction or this rebellion of 921 of Moplas in Kerala, it took in the context of economic exploitation. All right. So it was primarily an economic revolt against the Jainism. Jainism, that was the Hindu landlords in Kerala. So against the Jainism, the Hindu landlords who got the unconditional support from the British authority. All right. And therefore, these particular people of Mopla peasants, in fact, Muslim peasants inside Kerala, they reacted aggressively against both the institutions of exploitation, that is the Hindu Jainism and as well as the British authority over there inside Kerala. So therefore, according to some scholars, it became a communal, you can say, a tinge in that particular manner. And most importantly, the timing of this rebellion. The timing of this rebellion also indicate towards the communal reaction as well at that particular point of time. The timing was, of course, parallel to the issue of Khilafat movement of India. So non-cooperation Khilafat movement was also at the same point of time when this particular movement actually got emerged in Kerala. Fine. And it is very well known fact that once Mahatma Gandhi visited Kerala, then only this particular revolt came down to settle down, in fact, in that way. So, having said that, of course, it was a reaction initially against the Hindus' enemies, but definitely we should not say it was a purely communal reaction against the Hindus in modern India. Rather, it was an economic reaction of the Mapila rebellion, or Mapila, you can say, or Mapila Muslims, peasants in Kerala, because of their sheer exploitation that was done by the both Hindu enemies and the British authorities over there in terms of extracting the maximum revenue out of their entire works, entire farming activities. That's how you have to conclude this idea. All right. In detail, I've given the answer, but you have to keep in mind that what is the crux of this answer. The crux should not be on the lines of a communal reaction. The crux should be on the lines of it was an economic reaction, not purely a communal reaction. All right. Now, had it been, let's say any other people over there as Jainis, any other landlord over there as Jainis there in Kerala, the reaction would have come against them also. Now, it can only be said as a communal reaction because communalism is a modern phenomena. It is a middle class phenomena. It is not a peasants phenomena. Always remember this particular fact. Communalism in the political science, in the history understanding also, it is defined as a middle class phenomena. It is not a peasant phenomena. All right. That's what actually we have to keep in mind. Therefore, if we say it is a communal reaction, what we are trying to narrate that communism had emerged in India at a particular point of time. Now, even if that has emerged at that particular point of time, it can't come from the peasant class, peasantry class. Communism is a modern concept emerged due to the middle class section of society, and peasants were not a part of middle class section of society. Therefore, we can't accept it is as a communal reaction. All right, it was purely an economic reaction, socio-economic reaction against the sheer exploitation of the Mapila Muslims in Kerala. That should be your conclusion. ठीक है, तो ये ध्यान रखना है कि आपको ये स्टैंड साफ साफ लेना है कि कम्युनिज्म जो है एक मॉडर्न कॉन्सेप्ट है, पहली बात। दूसरी बात, कम्युनिज्म जो है ये एक मिडिल क्लास कॉन्सेप्ट है। ठीक है, ये कोई पुअर क्लास के लिए कम्युनिज्म नहीं होता है या रिच क्लास के लिए नहीं होता है, उनको कोई मतलब नहीं है कम्युनिज्म से। ठीक है, ये मिडिल क्लास का कॉन्सेप्ट है। तो ये गरीब लोग थे, ये किसान थे, ये कोई मिडिल क्लास नहीं थे, तो इनको कम्युनिज्म के अंतर्गत बांधना ये सही नहीं होगा। इट वॉज प्योरली एन इकोनॉमिक रिएक्शन। ऑलराइट, सोशियो इकोनॉमिक रिएक्शन था ये, उसी संदर्भ में आपको इसको देखना है। ठीक है, दैट शुड बी योर कंक्लूजन। फाइन, ये सब क्वेश्चन आपको फंसाने के लिए पूछ सकते हैं कहीं पे भी, वो इसे थोड़ा ध्यान रखना है, इसको कैसे स्टैंड लेना है यहाँ पे। हाँ बोलिए
सर। ये जो अभी क्वेश्चन आपने, इसका जो स्ट्रक्चर है ना सर, जैसे आपने अभी मैंने भी लिखा था सर, इसमें जो मोपलास कौन है, जर्नीज कौन है, ये इंट्रोडक्शन के बाद देना पड़ेगा या डायरेक्टली सिर्फ रिबेलियन के ही बारे में लिखना है?
नहीं, आप सीधे इस पे आइए ना, सीधे आप इस पे आइए कि मोपला रिबेलियन जो 1921 में हुआ, ठीक है, ये किस फैक्टर्स कारण से हुआ। यू सिंपली कम ऑन दिस कॉजेस ऑफ द मोपला रिबेलियन।
देयर इज नो नीड टू एक्सप्लेन वो मोपलास क्या थे, जर्नीज कौन थे।
नहीं, वो जरूरत नहीं है, उतना स्कोप नहीं होता है जीएस में। आंसर मैंने दे दिया है बड़ा, ताकि आपको समझ में आ जाए। If you don't have any idea, then you can read this entire answer. You get a complete idea about this rebellion. इसके बाद कुछ पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी आपको। लेकिन आपको अपने आंसर में इतनी ज्यादा डिटेल्स देने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती है। आपको वहां से इतना लिखना है कि क्या फैक्टर्स थे इसके रिएक्शन के अगेंस्ट में और उसका नेचर क्या था। Because this question is on the nature of Mopla rebellion. ठीक है, तो नेचर में डिबेट है, कुछ लोग मानना है कॉमन रिएक्शन था, लेकिन ओवरऑल जो आपको लिखना है कि नहीं, इट वाज अ सोशियो इकोनॉमिक रिएक्शन। ठीक है, बस ये ध्यान रखना है। ठीक है, हाँ विकास।
जैसे क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन में तो क्लियर रहता है कि दोनों टाइप लेना है, कमेंट वाले में से थोड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है क्या मतलब उसका नेचर होना चाहिए।
देखिए, अगर कमेंट में भी आया हुआ है ना, तो कमेंट में ये समझना है कि वो पूछ रहा है कि क्या ओपिनियन आपका होना चाहिए इस पे। आप कमेंट कीजिए कि सही है गलत है ये स्टेटमेंट। तो कमेंट में अगर वो ऐसा पूछे, कमेंट का मतलब ये होता है कि आप इससे इत्तेफाक रखते हैं या नहीं रखते हैं, ठीक है, आप उस पर कमेंट अपना दीजिए, कमेंट्री अपना दीजिए। अब समझना ये है कि क्या ये मेरा कमेंट्री मांग रहा है कि क्या ये हिस्टोरियन कमेंट्री मांग रहा है। तो आंसर में कभी भी वो आपके कमेंट्री नहीं मांगते हैं, ठीक है। हाँ, तो वो मांगते हैं हिस्टोरियन ने क्या इस पे इंटरप्रिटेशन दी है, वो कमेंट्री आपको देनी है, ठीक है। तो चूंकि ये जीएस का पेपर है, इसलिए आप हिस्टोरियन का नाम यहाँ कोट नहीं करेंगे, आप सिंपल इतना ही कोट करेंगे कि इस पे नेचर क्या होना चाहिए था, क्या था इनफैक्ट, ठीक है। और वो आप ऐसे बताएंगे कि भाई चूंकि इकोनॉमिक कॉजेस काफी मजबूत थे, तो कॉमनल अगर इश्यूज होते हैं तो कॉमनल टेंशन से पहले भी होते हैं, ठीक है, तो उससे पहले ऐसा कुछ था नहीं। दूसरा चीज जो मैंने आपको समझाया कि कॉमनलिज्म जो है मॉडर्न फेनोमेना है। तीसरा चीज ये कि मिडिल क्लास फेनोमेना है। तो वो सारे संदर्भ में यहाँ ये फिट नहीं करता है, कॉमनल रिएक्शन था, इसलिए इसको हम कहेंगे कि सोशियो इकोनॉमिक रिएक्शन ही था, क्योंकि वहां पे जेनविस कोई भी होता उसके अगेंस्ट रिएक्शन आता ही आता, ठीक है। वो इत्तेफाक था कि वो जेनविस हिंदूज थे, इत्तेफाक था वो जेनविस हिंदूज को ब्रिटिशर्स सपोर्ट कर रहे थे, इसलिए रिएक्शन दोनों के खिलाफ आया।
सर मैं जनरल किसी क्वेश्चन में अगर कमेंट टेल लगा दिया जाता है उसकी बात कर रहा हूँ सर, इसमें तो मतलब कमेंट इस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन, वैसे भी किसी क्वेश्चन में कमेंट लिखते रहता है ना जैसे टेल में, क्रिटिकल एग्जामिन में तो समझ में आ जाता है कि हाँ दोनों तरह से एग्जामिन करना।
कमेंट में भी आपको यही समझना है, कमेंट में भी यही करना है कि आपसे आपकी राय जानना चाह रहा है, ठीक है। तो क्रिटिकल एग्जामिन में तो आपको दोनों पक्ष बता देना होता है, ठीक है। यहाँ पे आपकी वो राय जानना चाह रहा है, तो राय आपकी खुद की राय नहीं होनी चाहिए, राय जो हिस्टोरियंस की राय है, जो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ हिस्टोरियंस, जो स्टैंडर्ड हिस्टोरियंस की राय है, उसको आपको डालने हैं, ठीक है। तो ये रखना है ध्यान में, ठीक है।
ये रिबेलियन में फोर्स कन्वर्जन हुए थे, वायलेंस एक्सेसिव हो गया था, तो ये सब नहीं करना है क्या?
कर सकते हैं, why not? You can talk about that the course of rebellion indicates towards, let's say, violent activities towards a particular community in which several thousands of people were massacred. All right. So obviously, in that way, there are scholars who are of the opinion that it was directed towards a particular community only. Fine. Therefore, they justify or they say that it was a communal reaction. But you have to say, however, the socio-economic causes were so strong. ठीक, ये ध्यान रखना है, क्योंकि
पत्थर का लकीर है कि अपने लिए वो सोचे।
एकदम, क्योंकि ये इस ऐसा क्वेश्चन पूछा ही जाता है आपको फंसाने के लिए कि आपका जो अनकॉन्शियस माइंड है वो कहाँ जा रहा है, ठीक है। वो कॉर्नल एंगल पे जा रहा है या वो न्यूट्रल पे जा रहा है, वो सेकुलर एंगल पे जा रहा है। तो आपको लगता है न्यूट्रल सेकुलर एंगल पे जाना है,
एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव पर्सपेक्टिव से ही सोचना है हम लोग को कि
एकदम
के लिए आसानी है।
एकदम यही वो टेस्ट करते ही है, मेंस में भी करेंगे और वो प्रीलिम्स इंटरव्यू में भी करते हैं, ठीक है ना, कि कितना आप कम्युनली कैसे ड्रिवन है, उस चीज को चेक करते हैं। वो कम से कम होना चाहिए, इनफैक्ट ना ही होना चाहिए इनफैक्ट। हाँ, तो ये रखना है ध्यान में, ठीक है ना। बस इसलिए ऐसे ऐसे क्वेश्चन पूछे जाते हैं। खैर, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन में आते हैं। So, what factors played a role in the emergence of Mahatma Gandhi on national politics and led the mass nationalism in India? That's not a very important question. See, first of all, you have to understand it is asking about the factors, है ना? So, this what is really key over here. See, factors could be both internal and external factors. Fine. So, internal, external factors, both you have to explain. Now, what do you mean internal factors? The internal factors basically in the context of the Mahatma Gandhi's own perspective towards the national issues, towards the national politics of India, and how did he learn from his own experience of, let's say, he being in South Africa, experience of he went to even England. All right. So what was his own personal experience, and that how he got driven by this urge of serving the society at large from a national, you can say, perspective. So internal factors आपको वहां से आइडेंटिफाई करना है, मतलब साइकोलॉजिकल फैक्टर्स को आइडेंटिफाई करना है। महात्मा गांधी की खुद की साइकोलॉजी कैसे थी, ठीक है, उस साइकोलॉजी में क्या क्या फैक्टर्स प्ले किए रोल, ताकि वो फिर इंडिया के तरफ attractive way, and then finally he decided to come back to India in 1915. Fine. So those factors you have to explain as a first factor. तो उसमें थोड़ा सा क्या करना है, उनका personal experience in South Africa you have to explain. Let's say a few of the experiences that he also witnessed in South Africa, whether the context of racial policy of South Africa, in the context of, let's say, the evil practices or the malpractices extended to the Indians and the Asians along with the Africans in South Africa. So those experiences you have to highlight. And then finally, you have to also highlight how he learned about the method of satyagraha and passive resistance very successfully in South Africa only. And there only he succeeded on those parameters. So he got the full confidence, a full, you can say, of course, belief in the method of passive resistance and satyagraha because of his success there in South Africa itself. Fine. He had no fear with the authority also. He had served also in jail in South Africa. So because of that particular experience of him, he was having no fear also from the British authority also, either in South Africa or also back into India. Fine. So that was the internal factor you have to explain. Then you have to explain external factors also. What are the external factors? See, external factors could be understood in the two ways. One is that organizationally, and what was the condition at that particular point of time. So organizationally, Indian National Congress had already come into existence. It has had a functioning of almost 30 years when he came down to India. All right. So organizationally, INC had started increasing its wings, its tentacles inside the Indian masses, among the Indian masses. There were already the groups of moderates and extremists had already emerged there among the INC, and their roles have already been there. So groundwork was being created by the INC. Groundwork was being created by the moderates and the extremist freedom fighters of India. And since he was a firm believer, or he was a disciple of Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Gokhale was his political guru. So obviously he learned a lot of methods also of fighting freedom struggle in India from him. So he observed, you have to write, he observed India very minutely. He didn't launch himself directly into the forefront of national freedom struggle. He observed for almost 5 to 6 years very minutely and did some small experiments like Kheda, Ahmedabad, Champaran. So Champaran, Kheda, Ahmedabad satyagrahas became successful. They were the small experiments of Mahatma Gandhi. When he succeeded on these 3 small experiments, he got confidence. He got confidence that his method of fighting for the cause of common people is successful or is very much effective. When he got this confidence, then he was waiting for the right time to overtake the national politics. And the time came. After demise of Gokhale, after the exit of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Now, Gokhale or Tilak were the 2 most important leaders before Mahatma Gandhi overtook the national politics. All right. So once these 2 leaders got exit, there was a vacuum. There's a vacuum in the national politics, and this vacuum was very nicely filled up by Mahatma Gandhi. And he immediately launched non-cooperation movement. All right, launched non-cooperation movement, and not only that, but he also tried to seek the support of common man in his movement, and he understood the power of common man for the first time. And therefore, what did he do? He tried to attract the attention of peasants, labor class, workers, even women, and top of that, even the Muslims, by aligning non-cooperation movement with Khilafat movement. Fine. So with these all, you can say, experimentation of Mahatma Gandhi, he was successful in doing that. He was successful in mobilizing the huge masses towards the national politics. And this is how he emerged on the national forefront by launching the movement like non-cooperation movement, which was the first national movement, especially in the context of Royal Satyagraha, It is considered to be first national movement, but after Roller Satyagraha, he immediately launched the non-corruption movement, and that became the immediate success of Mahatma Gandhi's. And before, because of this only, he became a national figure overnight. All right, that's how Mahatma Gandhi emerged on the national politics, and he led the mass nationalism in India after that. तो ये आपको बताना है, ठीक है। तो इंटरनल एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स दोनों दिखाना है कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशनली वो ऐसा था, कंडीशंस भी कंड्यूसिव हो गए थे उनके लिए, ठीक है। और साथ साथ उनको उनका जो एक्सपीरियंस था भारत में भ्रमण करने के बाद, जो उन्होंने समझा भारत को, जो उन्होंने गांव को समझा, जो उन्होंने गांव को नजदीक से देखा, और जिस तरह से उन्होंने अपने आप को ड्रेस स्टाइल किया, अपने बिहेवियर्स में चेंजेस लाए, ठीक है। दैट्स आल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू नोट डाउन हियर. The wearing of loin cloth, having no clothes on the top of the body, it was also a deliberate choice of Mahatma Gandhi to simply relate himself with the common man, simply make the common man realize that he is among us only. He is not different. He is not like, let's say, a person who is in suit boot. All right, he was having all the resources also to continue in suit boot sort of leadership, but he was not like that. He was neither like Jinnah, not like even Jawaharlal Nehru. He dressed himself in such a manner that he could easily be identified as one among the common man of India. And that's how he became successful. Or he emerged the national politics successfully. That's what actually you have to understand or write in this particular answer. Okay? तो ये सब आपको ध्यान रखना है इसमें. Next question is, what was commercialization of agriculture? How did it impact the peasants and rural economy? Simple question. You have to simply identify what do you mean by commercialization of agriculture. See, the best way to define is that once you shift from subsistence agriculture to commercial agriculture, it's called as commercialization of agriculture. Once you shift from the growing or the growth of or the production of the staple crops to cash crops, that is called as commercialization of agriculture. When you start growing the crops for the market, once you start growing the crops, once you start registering surplus in the production and surplus to be sold into the market, it is called as commercialization of agriculture. Fine. So this is how we have to define. And this particular process of commercialization of agriculture started in India from 1850 onwards. From the mid of 19th century, it was a deliberate policy of the Britishers to start the commercialization of agriculture in India. Fine. So that's what actually you have to explain the meaning of commercial agriculture, and then you have to also explain impact on the peasants and impact on rural economy overall. So impact on the peasants need to be understood in the context of that how it impacted the peasants' livelihood, source of livelihood, because you need to know that of course commercial agriculture was beneficial only for the planters, only for the British planters in India, especially the planters of indigo, cotton, sugar. Now they actually got the benefit of commercial agriculture. Overall, the peasants at large didn't receive that much of benefit that they should have received earlier. So of course that benefit was not going into the hand of the peasants. That is one thing. Secondly, once there was also a fluctuation in the price due to any global or let's say local factors, then the entire sufferings of commercial agriculture was pushed upon the shoulder of the poor peasants in India. All right. So the poor peasants had to bear the burden of the losses completely, and therefore their lifestyle became highly vulnerable, and therefore they started also seeking loan from the money lenders in India. So the role of money lenders emerged tremendously important in India due to commercialization of agriculture. So money lenders, role of baniyas, they all increased tremendously in India, and because of that only the debt burden, debt trap, this all started coming up in the lifestyle of peasants in India tremendously. Not only that, but even during the time of any scarcity of crop, scarcity of money, they didn't have even the source of bare minimum sustenance, the way it used to be there in the earlier system of practicing the subsistence form of agriculture. Now what happened when they shifted towards the cash crops, they didn't have even the food crops to eat during the time of any stress situation. So because of that also, it created a huge impact upon the rural economy in the form of famine-like situation. So famine became frequent in India, and in which thousands and millions of Indian farmers they got perished. All right, that's how it impacted also rural economy tremendously in India. Fine. Not only that, but also rural economy also started getting an impact in the context of more and more emergence of the role of moneylenders, in role of, let's say, the sahukars, the baniyas, mahajans in our system, in our society altogether. So rural economy started being dominated by these classes more often in a oral India. This is how the depeasantization, a word called depeasantization, is very important. Depeasantization. Depeasantization took place in India due to commercialization of agriculture only. All right. So peasants started becoming what? Tenants or landless laborers. Landless laborers or workers. So what happened? Because of their poor economic, of course, resources, they had to even sell their land. They had to even sell their near and dear ones. They had to even sell their pits to the local jamindars, to the local, of course, sahukars, businessmen. And because of that, they finally became landless laborers all over India. So depeasantisation became a typical feature of India due to the impact of commercialization of agriculture. All right, that's what actually you have to explain also in your answer. Fine. Now, another interesting question. This question is in the context of explain the rise of USA as a world power during the interwar period. So, between World War I and World War II, you have to explain the factors for the rise of USA as a world power. So, first and foremost, you have to explain the conditions prevailing during the time of World War I. See, during the time of World War I, of course, Woodrow Wilson wanted to remain neutral. That is what actually was his idea. However, Woodrow Wilson or the Americans were compelled to enter into World War I. And as you know that in both the wars, with the World War I or II, with the US entry into the war took a complete U-turn. The war took a complete U-turn, a new turn, in fact, in that way. Because in both the cases, you see the emergence of Germany as a superpower. Superpower in the World War I, also in World War II as well. All right. But with the entry of USA, the entire course of war changed altogether. The point is that why USA entered the World War I? See, US entered the World War I because of two major reasons. One was Lusitania incident. Lusitania incident is very important. You have to remember this. This is Lusitania. Lusitania incident. All right. Now, Lusitania incident, it was an incident in which the German submarine, it actually attacked the British, of course, cargo ship, in fact, British ship named Lusitania, which was carrying not only the British citizens, but also the Americans over it. And in this particular attack, even 128 Americans got killed. All right, that was the first, you can say, bizarre attack upon the Americans by the Germans during the First World War. Secondly, of course, not only that, there was also a Zimmermann plan. Now, see, Zimmermann. Now, who was Zimmermann? He was a foreign minister of Germany. Now, this Zimmermann plan, it also increased the chances of America to enter into World War I. And what was this plan? See, the German foreign minister, he wrote a letter to his counterpart in Mexico. What was the letter? Letter was to seek the support of Mexico against the American extension of support to the British and the French allies, because America was still selling the arms and ammunitions and other essential support to Britain and France during the World War I. So, of course, here Germany wanted that America should be engaged in the Latin American countries or in the South American dispute only, should not concentrate what is happening in Europe. So therefore, Zimmermann telegram was sent to their the Mexican counterpart, in which Germany promised Mexico to not only defeat America but also take over the disputable lands. Disputable lands between Mexico and America were the areas like Texas, Arizona, or New Mexico. So these areas would be given to Mexico if Mexico attacks America. If Mexico attacks America to divert their attention, and in the meanwhile, Germany is already attacking the Britain on the French locations, and by this particular activity, if Germany becomes victorious, then Germany will also offer these territories to Mexico back from America. Now that was a plan of Zimmermann. Now this plan was leaked by, of course, Britain only to the American counterpart. So when America got to know about this plan, America became furious and also entered into the war. All right, there were two important reasons why America entered into the First World War. Fine, these two factors you have to write in the answer. Similarly, after the First World War, or between the First World War and Second World War, of course, what happened that America never wanted to be a part of any, let's say, big wars, because America was concentrating at this particular point of time on their industrial power. America witnessed industrialization in the late 19th century and early 20th century. So America wanted to concentrate only on their industrial power, industrial strength. They wanted to become a part of any war-like situation. However, it was forced to enter the war-like situation in the First World War by Germany in that way. After that, of course, America wanted to pacify the situation and to keep building its economic power strongly. Therefore, Woodrow Wilson proposed the 14 points. 14 points which was not liked by the French and the British counterparts. All right. So even though the conditions started becoming so fertile that the Second World War was about to take place, America tried its all level best to pacify the situation by launching the Dawes and Young Plan. See, America launched Dawes and Young Plan in 1924 and 1925. Fine. What was this Dawes and Young Plan? See, this Dawes and Young Plan were the financial assistance program. To whom? To Germany. Why? So that Germany must forget the losses in the World War First. Losses in the World War First, and Germany should regain the strength, economic strength, through this plan. So America started extending the economic assistance to Germany through the Dawes and Young Plan. Fine. Now this was another indication which shows US started interfering into the European politics through economic means only, but it was definite an intervention in the European politics at that point of time. However, the interest of America was to only satiate Germans, not to go for launching another round of war with the European counterparts. Fine. That was the objective of Americans in the Dawes and Young Plan of 1924-25. Fine. But situations did not remain the same, because the Dawes and Young Plan could not rescue Germans, especially in the light of the outbreak of the Great Economic Depression. So in 1928, once the Great Economic Depression took place, American entire plan also got haywire. So 1928 incident was a big shock, not only for the Americans, but also for the entire Europeans, especially Germany. And because of that only, Germany again entered into the era of the fascist forces. Because of lack of economic opportunities, economic options, economic reconstruction in Germany, the fascist forces started getting strength in Germany. And people like Hitler got the ground for getting the support of the German youths in the light of unemployment, massive unemployment, and massive, you can say, economic scarcity in Germany. So because of these factors, again, Germany emerged as a power in the hands of the fascist or Nazi forces like Hitler. Fine. This is how Hitler came into power. But again, in the World War II also, US had to enter into this war. And in this war, US had to enter, or US was forced to enter because of the Japanese fascist forces, which attacked the Pearl Harbor, which forced America to enter into this war forcefully. So of course, in that way, you can understand with the Japanese attack on the Pearl Harbor only, America decided to now also enter into the World War II. And once America entered into the World War II, again, the entire balance of World War II went into the favor of the Western alliance. All right. And through this, of course, America, Britain, and France were able to defeat both Germany and Japan, the two most important fascist forces at that particular point of time. Fine. That is how the World War II came to an end. But the dropping of atomic bomb by America, it established the fact that America is the next superpower in the world. All right. And therefore, we see after the World War II, only superpower politics remained in force in the context of the emergence of US as one single power to lead from the Western Alliance front, and USSR became another power to lead from the Eastern Alliance front. So this is how America emerged as a superpower in the world between these two World War II period. That's what actually you have to explain. Okay?
तो क्वेश्चन में इंटर वॉर पीरियड जो होता है सर, वो इंटर वॉर पीरियड का मतलब दो वॉर्स के बीच वाला फेज होता है ना सर?
राइट, बिल्कुल.
सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर चालू होने के बाद के फेज को इंक्लूड करना है इसमें?
हाँ, क्योंकि वर्ल्ड वॉर का बहुत लंबा फेज था ना, 1939 से 45 तक चला वर्ल्ड वॉर. ठीक है, तो आपके पास पूरा स्कोप है, मतलब यू हैव टू राइट फ्रॉम 1914 टू 1945. सो 1914 से लेकर 1945 के बीच का जो फेज है, उसके बारे में पूरा डिस्क्रिप्शन बता देना है. ठीक है, और इसमें आपको एक और एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूं कि जब 1941 में अटलांटिक चार्टर साइन हुआ, अटलांटिक चार्टर साइन होता है 1941 में चर्चिल और रूजवेल्ट के बीच में. ठीक है, तो चर्चिल ब्रिटेन के प्राइम मिनिस्टर थे, रूजवेल्ट प्रेसिडेंट थे अमेरिका के. अब अटलांटिक चार्टर जब साइन होता है तो इसी से इंडिकेट हो जाता है कि अब अमेरिका जो है एक बहुत बड़ा फोर्स है, बिकॉज इसके थ्रू अमेरिका ने ब्रिटेन को कहा कि अब आप हमारे ऑर्डर के अनुसार काम करेंगे. This was simple a message to the British authority that you will act upon the directives given by the American president. Because there was differences also between Roosevelt and Churchill. When they were able to defeat Hitler, of course, Churchill changed the stance altogether. Because as per Atlantic Charter, America wanted that there should be a process of decolonization across the world. There should be a deliberate process of decolonization across the world. But Churchill denied it. Churchill said, no, we will only be going for decolonization of those territories which were occupied by the German forces during the, or before the Second World War, in fact. But Roosevelt reprimanded Churchill very strongly that you can't do away with the Atlantic Charter's provisions. Atlantic Charter is applied not only upon the German occupied territories, it applies also upon the British occupied territories. All right, so it made clear, it gave a clear direction to British authority that you have to go for decolonization under the international observation, maybe by under the American observation, or maybe by any international organization that could be formed, which was formed also after the League of Nations was transformed into UNO. All right, that is how Atlantic Charter also establishes the fact that emergence of America as a superpower at that particular point of time. ठीक है, तो ये सब कुछ पॉइंट्स है जो आपको उसमें शामिल करने अपने आंसर्स में. राइट
सर, जस्ट वन मोर, सॉरी, मेरे को एक थोड़ा सा डाउट है इसमें सर. ये सब वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 के बाद से स्फीयर ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंसेस बंटना शुरू हो गया था. जो भी कंट्रीज हार रहे थे उनको स्फीयर ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंसेस में बांट रहे थे ये लोग. और यूएसए भी उस टाइम पे थोड़ा कोलोनाइजेशन के ऊपर अपना फोकस रख रहा था, ऑल ओवर इंडिया छोटे छोटे आइलैंड को कोलोनाइज कर रहे थे लोग। उस समय लीग ऑफ नेशंस फॉर्म हुआ था, बट उनको रेटिफाई नहीं किया गया था कांग्रेस में, तो इसीलिए वो यूएस विड्रॉ कर लिया था। फिर वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 के बाद सर, जब अपना ये अटलांटिक चार्टर में साइन किया, व्हाट सडनली चेंज इन द political scenario of US which forced them to go for decolonization worldwide?
See, idea was that already because of the colonization process, the mass movements were raising its heads across the world, including Asian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, etc. Already the movement of freedom had already been launched. Even in the case of, let's say, China, already there was a struggle in China in the context of Manchurian crisis, Manchuria as a region. Fine. So, of course, US wanted to, first of all, pacify these all situations. That's one thing. Secondly, US had already gone for the peak of their industrialization, in fact, all right, by this particular point of time. Now, US wanted to use these markets also. US wanted to use these markets, and these markets could not be used by US freely without making them a free country. So therefore, US wanted to make them free. And however, in the case of, let's say, the territories occupied by America in the form of, let's say, Philippines or some of the islands of Philippines and the islands of Atlantic Ocean region, sorry, the Pacific Ocean region, of course, these areas were under the occupation of America only. But there the mass movement was not so strong the way it was strong in, let's say, Indian subcontinent for the freedom struggle. All right. And there was also a huge population factor. This population were acting as a big market potential for America, and already these colonies, which are already in the hand of America, America could have used it as a, let's say, the economic, under the economic imperialism, by even leaving these colonies as a free country. And this happened also. I mean, idea is that, of course, America made these countries free, but afterwards also these small island countries remained as a colonies of America, but it was in the context of neo-colonialism. So neo-colonialism remained there very active in the entire Pacific region. All right. So America had an interest to make these colonies free because of their market potentialities. All right. And that's what actually America wanted to do, because already they had succeeded on the industrial front. Secondly, they have faced the problem of economic depression. Thirdly, they have already revived their economy to the large extent. But this World War II gave them the huge, you can say, income. Because in this World War II, if any country that got the benefit of money, it was only America. All of them lost their some of the money, or let's say huge money. America only gained the money this entire World War II. Now they wanted to use this money for, again, the production of goods and commodities, and those goods and commodities should be sold into some different markets of the world. It can only be possible if these countries start leaving those colonies for the American market, American products, in fact. All right, that is actually a typical case. So if you see the case of Vietnam War, now Vietnam War is a typical example in this entire scenario. Why? Because in Vietnam War, what was the issue? Issue was, of course, France occupied the Vietnam territory initially, but after Geneva Conference, France left the territory and it was given to the hand of American, you can say, control. America wanted to use it in the context of both the ways. One, to control communism, not to spread to Vietnam. Communism from China and Russia should not enter into Vietnam. And secondly, Vietnam should remain as a complete market for American products. All right. That's what actually America tried to keep a control of Vietnam, despite the fact that America was a protagonist of supporting the idea of decolonization across the globe. All right. That's actually the point. Fine. So economic interest was the primary factor for America to enter into this whole domain, in fact. Fine. And you can see, I mean, World War I, World War II, I mean, America was not at all interested in entering into the world wars. If you see the World War I and II, both, America government stand or Congress stand was clear. They don't want to enter into the world wars. Yet they were forced to enter. They were forced to enter because of these circumstances and conditions prevail at that particular point of time. But if you see their intention originally, the intention was to maximize the income rather to waste your resource in the world wars. That was the idea of America initially, in fact, because that was the time of consolidation of American empire. They don't want to actually waste their energy, waste their resources in the context of involving in world wars. All right. So once they succeeded on consolidation, then you see America entered into the unilateralism across the globe. That is the point. ठीक है. Now, discuss the events unfolded the Suez crisis of 56. So this question has already been asked by UPSC in the main examination. So what were its consequences? So see, uh, Suez crisis of 1956. This crisis is a typical crisis of West Asia, where the Suez Canal has been constructed uh, in the region of Egypt only, in this region of Sinai Peninsula region only, which provides the very good connection from the Sea of Mediterranean to Indian Ocean via Red Sea. All right. So because of that particular potentiality of this canal, it actually occupies huge economic importance right from the beginning. So this canal was constructed somewhere around 1870 only, and since then it has been functional. And this canal provided the shortest route to connect Europe to India, connect Europe to the entire Asian countries, in fact. So it is a subcontinent of South Asia, in fact. So because of that particular factor only, this canal was important for the British Empire initially. And then once the British Empire had started withdrawing in the process of decolonization, of course, it became important also for the Egyptian Empire, in fact. All right. Now, the point is the issue was the basic tension in the Mediterranean area, the West Asian area, between Israel versus the Arab nations. It was the formation of Israel that created a tension among the Arab nations altogether. And because of that only, this tension was nothing, it was an outcome of the same simmering tensions between Israel and the Arabic world. So, in the context of this only, this issue has to be analyzed. Now, Gamal Abdel Nasser. Now, Gamal Abdel Nasser was the most important leader of Egypt who announced to actually nationalize this particular Suez Canal entire region because of two factors. He wanted to actually construct a dam over that, over the Suez Canal area, in fact. All right. And this dam could have been only constructed by having money. So Aswan Dam was one of the pet projects of Abdel Nasser. So he wanted through Aswan Dam to not only to scuttle down the importance of England and Israel in this region, but also to use the river Nile water for the irrigation and multi-purposes project inside Egypt. That was the objective of construction of Aswan Dam by this person Nasser. Now Nasser wanted to take loan from America, where America initially promised to offer the loan. Why offer the loan? Because America was also having a fear of the expansion of communism in the Arabic areas. But America could not provide the fund immediately. In the meanwhile, Soviet Russians started offering the funds to these particular countries, especially including even Egypt. Now, because of this, of course, it annoyed both Britain and, of course, Israel. So Britain, Israel, and even France, they declared a war against Egypt. So they attacked Egypt overnight only, and this war went on. But in between, America intervened, and America reprimanded these three power, or the three allies, in fact, and asked them to withdraw from this war immediately. Now, why? Because America had two objectives. One is that America was already entered into the area of Vietnam at that particular point of time. Geneva Conference was signed in 1956 only. All right. So with the Geneva Conference, with France retracted, America entered into Vietnam, and already America had been facing a crisis in Vietnam. So America didn't want to, of course, divert the attention in this particular segment. Secondly, America was not very happy with the British intention of launching a war against Egypt. Without taking America into confidence, these powers attacked Egypt and they entered into the war. Fine. In between, of course, Russians started extending the support to Egyptian forces unconditionally. Even Russians started also reprimanding the three powers in terms of attacking them through nuclear weapons. However, America countered Russians' threat by even giving the same sort of warning to Russia that if there would be raining of nuclear arsenals upon European countries, similar treatment would be given to Russians also at that particular point of time. So almost the world was facing another threat of the another round of World War III. In fact, at a point of time. Now, in this scenario where America was not very much interested in having this particular war in particular Arab, you can say, countries, of course, these countries were involved in this war, and that was not liked by America. So America finally asked France, Britain, and Israel to give up their campaign and withdraw from the Egyptian soil immediately. All right, and because of that only, of course, because of American warning only, they had to withdraw, and they withdrew from this particular crisis. Of course, with this withdrawal of British forces, Israeli forces, French forces, it was understood to be a victory of Nasser of Egypt. All right, so that is how this particular war had been analyzed. In this war, it was clear that Britain lost its prestige because Britain as a power had gone into backyard, and America became the forefront. America emerged as a forefront power in the global politics because America had clearly taken a stand against this war, against these three triple alliance, in fact, against Egypt in this war. And because of these factors only, the emergence of America became formidable on the global politics also. All right, this is how the war actually came to an end. But at the same time, Britain became the second subservient power of America, an appendage of America. In fact, in that way, America emerged as a superpower. Secondly, USSR also entered into the politics of Arab, you can say, region. Thirdly, Arab nationalism got a huge boost at that particular point of time. All right. So Arab nationalism, why? Because Arab nationalism in the context of Egypt to become a leader of Arab nationalism at that particular point of time. That happened, in fact. So Egypt became the leader of Arab nationalism at that particular point of time. All right. Fourth, because of Egypt becoming an leader of Arab nationalism, Egypt started threatening the existence of Israel continuously after that. So Egypt started believing that Israel can be now finished away completely from the map of Palestine. All right. Now that particular confidence to Egypt came because of America's intervention, and probably Egypt wrongly misinterpreted, in fact, the American stand for Egypt and against Israel at that particular point of time. Because after just 10 years, Israel and US again allied and they attacked Egypt. And in 6 days, Egypt was decimated completely. That is called as 6 Days War. So in the 6 Days War, America again showed that America is still closer to Israel than Egypt, which Egypt used to believe that probably America is now not going to enter into any of the local conflict in the West Asia because of Russia's threat. But America showed it otherwise. America showed it otherwise in 66, 67 only. In the 6 Days War, America, along with Israel, attacked Egypt. And then finally, the issue of Suez Canal was settled down permanently. All right. So this is how Suez Canal issue became a issue of conflict. And finally, with the change of the government in Egypt, Anwar el-Sadat finally reopened Suez Canal for everyone. All right. This is how Suez Canal remained open area for the Europeans and other powers to conduct a trade with the Asian countries in the world. That is how Suez Canal story has been there. All right. That's what actually I have to explain. Okay. Now, next question is, why did Japan and Germany join the Anti-Comintern Pact of 1936? Now, see, first of all, Anti-Comintern Pact is against the communist, against the communist government or communist setup. Now, you have to understand few things, that the fastest power was against the communist also. World witnessed a tripartite struggle at that point of time. Tripartite struggle was between fascism, democracy, and communism. So all of them were against each other, in fact. All right. Neither democracy wanted communism to proliferate, let's say, to uh, increase its influence, nor even democracy wanted fascism to increase its influence, and vice versa. Fascism was also against communist powers, also against democracy in the world. All right, that was the you can say the tripartite struggle that was still going on, ideological struggle that was going on in Europe before the World War II and after World War II. That's continued, in fact. So let us see this particular aspect. So anti-Comintern pact was primarily between Germany and Japan. Now Germany and Japan both were anti-communist initially, all right, and they wanted to simply you can say challenge the communist authorities, especially in Soviet Union, because Soviet Union had emerged as a communist power already with the Russian Revolution. Fine, they were against them, but this particular treaty or this particular pact was simply to ally with the with the Japanese by the Germans at that point of time. However, Germans were smart enough to also understand that Germans' main rivalry was not only against the communists but also against the democratic powers in Western Europe. So therefore, Germans also went for signing a pact with the USSR, which threatened the entire concept of anti-Comintern pact. Fine. However, Germans started taking the, of course, you can say, a good support of Japanese also, even after signing the pact with the USSR in 1936-37 itself. Fine. So why Germans went to sign a pact with the USSR despite the fact they had gone for signing an anti-Comintern pact in 1936 against the communists? The idea was that again Germans were having a fear that if there is a war between Germany and France or Germany and Britain, Russia should not come in support of the the Britain and the French power. That's one thing. Secondly, Germans were having an intention very clear that they wanted to expand under the philosophy of Lebensraum. Lebensraum. The Lebensraum was the policy of Hitler. Now, Lebensraum was a policy of Hitler in which the German race the German race is expanding. Hence, Germany needs more and more territories. So Germany needs more and more territories. Now, because of this more and more territories, Germany has all the freedom to attack and annex the other territories. Now, this was the philosophy under which Germany started attacking the neighboring countries, neighboring areas, and started annexing them as a part of the great German empire, or German Reich. Fine. Now, to have this, Germany understood to take the support of USSR because Germany had intention to attack upon Poland and also Denmark, even Czechoslovakia. So, because of this particular factor, only Germany attacked Denmark, Poland, just to keep USSR always in their side. Now, this pact did not play a role in terms of pacifying Russians against the Germans. Russians also understood the German intention, and Russians came out from this pact and started attacking the German forces, or rather, launch a war against German forces. Because of this, only the war took place with the launch of war against Poland, or against Poland by the Germans at the point of time. Okay. So पोलैंड के खिलाफ जैसे ही इन्होंने अटैक किया, जर्मन्स ने अटैक किया पोलैंड को कब्जा करने के लिए, इधर ब्रिटेन और फ्रांस ने डिक्लेयर किया वॉर, उधर रशिया भी समझ गया कि द इंटेंशन ऑफ जर्मन्स आर नॉट सो साउंड, सो देयरफॉर रशिया आल्सो announced a war against the Germans. Fine. So with this, the entire situation did not materialize the way it should have materialized, the way Germans wanted to achieve the objective through this particular pact. Now, in this context, only you have to understand that the anti-Comintern pact, which was signed for pacifying Russia, in terms of not challenging the policy of Lebensraum of Germany, did not materialize. Anti-Comintern pact was signed between Germany and Japan. It was also joined by Italy later on. Fine. It was primarily against the communist power of Russia. After signing it, Germans thought that it is better also to sign another pact with Russians, so that it is not only we are going to create our own group between Germans, Japans, and the Italians, but also Russians should be taken into confidence before attacking the areas of other parts of Europe. So with this, of course, Japan got annoyed initially, but Japan was also convinced by the German diplomats regarding their agenda. Fine. So Japan and Germany joined the anti-committant pact because to sideline Russia. That's one thing. But the objective of Germany was not made fully. Objective of Germany was not to sideline Russia in terms of the Lebensraum policy. Rather, what happened because of the Lebensraum policy, Russia again became annoyed with the German steps, or German, you can say, policies. And what happened? It led to in fact, resulting into the Second World War. If you see what happened in 1939, they signed a non-aggression pact. All right, German and Soviets signed non-aggression pacts, which again renounced the anti-committant pact. Fine. So with this particular pact of Germany, even Japan got annoyed initially. But Germans were smart enough to convince Japan it was a ploy to only keep Russia out of the, you can say, intervention into the European politics. However, our main agenda is to keep the communists always away from grabbing the power in entire Europe and also in Asia. This is how they convinced Japan. But Japan got sort of, you can say, apprehension upon the German intention. Fine. Then what German did a mistake. German again went for signing a pact with the Soviets. Now, once Soviets pact was signed in the non-aggression pact, which gave Germans a full confidence that now they can attack the other regions of Europe and they can capture those areas under Lebensraum policy. Once they attacked Denmark, or till Denmark, the Russians were not opposing, in fact, because there was already a mutual understanding that Germans will occupy Denmark and Russians will occupy Finland and Sweden. All right. So this is how even the Russians came into the clutch of the German, you can say, conspiracy. Fine. It happened. But occupation of Poland, because Poland used to be a gateway to Russia, in fact. All right. Poland was a gateway to Russia from Europe. So occupation of Poland actually annoyed not only the Western powers, but also the Russians. Because Russians wanted that Poland should not be attacked by Germans and Poland should remain always a neutral country because it will act as a buffer zone between Russians and the Germans. But with this attack, even the Russians also annoyed by the Germans, and then finally the World War II got outbroken. That was a complete scenario in which this anti-committant pact unfolded. Fine. That was a point we had to understand. Fine. So objective was to, of course, keep the communists always away from the intervention into the local affairs at that particular point of time. And how did it shape the world politics? It shaped the world politics in the context of the situations closing towards or reaching towards the occurrence of World War II. That is how anti-committant pact played a role in terms of the alliances and counter alliances, which was almost similar to the causes of World War I. Fine. So वर्ल्ड वॉर फर्स्ट में भी अलायंसेस काउंटर अलायंसेस हुए थे, उसी टाइप से वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 के समय में भी उसी टाइप के अलायंसेस एंड काउंटर अलायंसेस जर्मनी ने करवाया और वो फाइनली फासिस्ट पावर के द्वारा करवाए गए पैक्ट्स के कारण ही वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 के सिचुएशंस जो है इमर्ज हुए. दैट इज हाउ यू नरेट द एंटायर स्टोरी. ठीक है. हाँ
सर, ये जब मैं वर्ल्ड वॉर पढ़ रहा था सर, उसमें ऐसा लिखा हुआ था कि मुसोलिनी, कार्ल मार्क्स अर्लियर थोड़ा सोशलिस्ट ही थे ना सर ये लोग पहले.
कौन कौन?
मुसोलिनी हुआ और
मुसोलिनी,
सॉरी मार्क्स, हिटलर. इनिशियली ये सोशलिस्ट ही थे ये लोग.
दे वर सोशलिस्ट.
ऐसा हुआ था सर कहीं पे, मुसोलिनी का तो लिखा हुआ है बट हिटलर का 100% नहीं लिखा हुआ था।
No. They were not actually socialists in that way. See, idea was that in Germany and Italy both, these socialist movements emerged. All right, and this socialist movement emerged, which is parallel to the ideology of Hitler and the ideology of the German government at that particular point of time. Fine. There was a person named Rosa Luxemburg. Rosa Luxemburg was in Germany. She became one of the most important protagonists of the socialist revolution in Germany. It is called as Cap Push. All right. So this is Cap Push Uprising. The Campus Uprising took place somewhere around 1924-25 in Germany. Fine. And it was led by Rosa Luxemburg. This was a perfect example of the socialist movement that took place in Germany. So the German chancellor or German authority at that point of time was against the socialist movement also. Now, Hitler was not at all a socialist, you can say sympathizer. However, he was clear in his idea that he wanted to command the entire authority through seeking the support of the workers and the unemployed youth of Germany. So what he noticed that the socialist movements were also suppressed by the authority. Therefore, he did not become a protagonist of socialism there in Germany. Rather, he started getting the support of the capitalists, in fact, in Germany. So fascist powers support capitalist or capitalism only. All right. But at the same time, they try to control all the powers in their own hand. Therefore, this is how they are different from a capitalist democratic institutions or capitalist democratic country like, let's say, Western Europe or America in that way. But both of them have one common thing to bind them together, that is they favor capitalism. They don't favor socialism. All right. Therefore, they were against even the communist. For example, let's say I tell you one example. When Hitler came into power, in fact, what Hitler did, Hitler put the entire Riksdag on fire. Riksdag was the name of the parliament of Germany. So he put the entire Riksdag on fire and alleged that this firing incident has been done by the communists of Germany. What did he allege? He alleged that the firing incident in Germany was done by the communists of Germany. So therefore, the communists should be repressed forcefully. So after this, Hitler acquired enormous power in which he started killing and decimating all the communists and socialists of Germany, in fact. Now, because of this factor also, he got immense support from the big capitalist powers of Germany. Or the big capitalist powers of Germany, they extended unconditional support to Hitler. Fine. So this is how he started eliminating the socialist or communist forces from Germany one by one, in fact. In the case of Mussolini also, he initially was, of course, in favor of having the workers, you can say, concerns to be taken care of. But he designed in such a different model altogether. That is what we call is the corporate model. All right, in which he made the entire workers to come under one particular unit, one particular union. So one particular industry owned by few industrialists, and the entire workers would come under one union only, and this all union would be led by Mussolini only. So Mussolini would be the chief of this all union, just like Chamber of Commerce. All right, and the head of Chamber of Commerce would be Mussolini. That was the situation there in the context of Italy. That took a point of time, but none of them were socialists in that way. They all were capitalists completely. They all were in support of the capitalist powers, capitalist forces completely. Difference was only in the context of they wanted to concentrate all the powers into the hand of state. Therefore, they are called as fascist powers, or the fascist, you can say, regime in 1930s in the world. Fine, that is the point. ठीक है, तो ये स्टोरी था दोनों के पीछे.
थोड़ा सा सर कहानी का कंफ्यूजिंग है सर, क्योंकि 2-3 जगह से जहाँ पे मैंने पढ़ाई किया था, तो ऐसे बता रहे थे कि मुसोलिनी वाज अ स्टॉन्च सोशलिस्ट इनिशियली in his public sphere as a staunch socialist, but privately वो थोड़ा कैपिटलिस्ट को सपोर्ट करता था, बट वो उसका जो जहाँ पे वो काम करता था वो सोशलिस्ट न्यूज़पेपर था. तो वो सर वो मुझे समझ नहीं रहा कि वो ट्रांजिशन कैसे हुआ इनका इतना जो स्ट्रॉन्ग, मतलब इवन दो अगर वो नहीं भी सपोर्ट करता था सर, मूविंग फ्रॉम सोशलिस्ट टू नार्सिज्म इज अ वेरी ड्रास्टिक है. वो आइडियोलॉजी समझ ही नहीं रहा था सर मुझे क्यों हो रहा है ये.
नहीं, उसमें देखो सर पॉइंट ये है, देयर आर टू फैक्टर्स बिहाइंड दैट. वन इज दैट they understood the intention, or they understood the conditions prevailing in both the countries of Italy and Germany, both these leaders. All right, and they understood that the conditions are so fertile that they can actually grab the power by let's say coming to limelight of the local politics or the regional politics of the particular era. The socialism was the most emerging ideology at that particular point of time. They wanted to gain the sympathy of worker class, the peasant class, the suffrage class of that point of time. So therefore, they started propagating the ideology of socialism. But at the same time, they understood that if they want to control the power, they will have to subjugate all the socialist political parties. They will have to eliminate the political parties which actually have been advocating the issue of socialism across Italy and across Germany both. In both the cases of Germany and Italy, what happened? These powers, these people, once they grabbed the power, their first attack was against the communist and the socialist people. Because if they are eliminated, then only they can enjoy the full control into the system. Otherwise, the socialists and communists would keep opposing the rule of a single leadership, a single party in that particular era. So that's what actually was the struggle going on. And then finally, they transform it in the context of the economic crisis, economic depression. When economic depression took place, of course, neither the socialists was having a solution, not even the communists were having the solution, not even the capitalists were having the solution. So solution was finally provided by them. Now they said that we will provide you employment. You extend unconditional support to the state. The state will look after your major causes of concerns. Your major cause of concerns are, let's say, roti, kapra and makan, that will be provided by the state. But you will have to give the unconditional support, losing your entire freedom under the state authority. That happened successfully, that took place successfully. So it was the economic conditions that was prevalent which actually prompted them to convert their entire ideology towards fascism, in fact. That's the point. Okay? So in what ways this Swadeshi movement was a turning point in the modern Indian history? Why did it fizzle it out so early? See, a Swadeshi movement was a turning point because of various factors. First and foremost factor is that it was the first organized movement before Gandhian movement took place in India. Fine. Second, that it was a movement that challenged the British authority from the root. Fine. Third, it was a movement launched by the extremist members of Congress. So extremists showed their strength, their power, their organizational, you can say, capability or capacity by launching a movement from the root of the British Empire itself. All right, that was the third important factor for that. Fine, that's how it was turning point. Fourth, they realized the importance of the mass movement for the first time. So the mass movement and the power of masses were realized for the first time, and how it can actually challenge the British authority was successfully executed through the Swadeshi movement only. Fourth, unity has a strength. Now, the strength of unity was also realized in this Swadeshi movement only, and therefore in this movement you see they started talking about the participation of various segments of society. They started forming the corps of volunteers, samitis, etc. They started talking about the self-reliance, Atma Shakti, or etc. And top of that, they also started talking about the the local made objects or local made products in India. So this Swadeshi movement was also a turning point in the context of emphasizing upon the economic strength of India. All right. So local made products became, you can say, a slogan of this particular movement, that we have to promote the locally made products only. We have to consume the locally made products only. We have to discard and boycott the foreign goods or foreign made goods in India. This is something was a turning point in the modern India, because this particular method was used also in the future movements or future, you can say, movements launched by even Mahatma Gandhi in the under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi under the INC movement, or in the INC International Congress movement. All right, that's how it was turning point. So that's what I have to explain this in this idea in this particular context. Then why did it fizzle out so early? So what are the reasons of failure of this movement? So failure of this movement was, of course, the government adopted very highly suppressive or repressive methods to eliminate the people who were supporting this movement altogether. Secondly, the movement was organizationally not so strong the way it was there in the Gandhian era. All right, so that's another factor. Thirdly, there was no any leadership, no any major leadership of this movement. That's another very important factor of this fizzling out. Fourthly, there was not any objective clarified in this movement apart from the boycott and the discarding and the protest in this movement. What should be the objective? Clearly not identified in this movement, because this movement didn't get any big importance. Fourthly, the objective that was basically in the context of anti-partition. Now this entire issue was fizzled out, or rather this entire issue got no importance after Britishers announced to annul the partition in 1911 in fact. So in 1911, when British government announced to annul the partition, the entire movement lost its entire credibility, in fact, in that way. So that is how you have to explain this idea. Then of course they split also, they split between the moderates and extremists on various ideas, like whether to extend this movement beyond Bengal to Maharashtra, whether to adopt some methods of movement like the popular Hindu festivals, etc. It also annoyed the Muslim participants, the Muslim, you can say, peasants in that particular manner. So this movement also created a cleavage or a difference between the communities there in West Bengal also. Correct. That's what actually was the point in the Bengal region also altogether. In fact, this is how you have to explain this idea, that how this movement actually started becoming weak gradually. Fine. And last but not the least, that of course it failed to reach the masses. The mass participation was very much limited in this movement, and because of that only this movement had to fizzle out early. So this is how the movement lost its importance after some point of time. Right. So was partition, next question, was partition of India inevitable? Why did Congress and Gandhiji accept partition? So see, this question is, first of all, you have to understand that was partition of India, hello, yes, was partition of India inevitable or not? So you have to explain this idea that till 1946, partition was definitely stoppable. All right, partition was definitely stoppable, so it was not at all inevitable. But after 1946, conditions became so fertile that it was, without partition, it was not possible to keep India intact or to keep the objective of India's freedom intact. Yeah, keep so yes, so keep India intact and keep the objective of India of freedom of India intact. So in 1946 only, after 1946 only, the conditions became so fertile, also you can say aggressive, that it was not possible to keep India, a partition of India, let's say intact in that way, or to unchecked, unfollowed in that way. So what happened that in 1946, especially